Ah, your Power BI theme isn't a color palette, it's the containment field. If it leaks, your visuals lie. Pure, undiluted power turned into a blur of false calm. Most people think brand colors are harmless, but those hues can erase alerts, hide subtotals, and smother context. You need to know this. 5 invisible failures are burying critical signals in plain sight. Here's what actually happens and how we stop it. I'll expose each failure, then hand you a ruthless pass-fail validation protocol, contrast gates, JSON locks, and organizational themes that force the truth to stay visible. Observe the anomaly. First, the accessibility reactor. The accessibility reactor, contrast for alerts, is failing. Now focus. Alerts are your sirens, and your theme is muting them. When contrast collapses, a red KPI becomes decorative confetti. No urgency, no recognition, only delay. That's catastrophic. We're dealing with physics of perception. If luminance contrast between foreground and background falls below the thresholds, the human eye stops resolving edges. The signal dissolves into the canvas. Marvelous chaos if you're an attacker, a disaster if you're an analyst. Here's the law. For text and UI labels, enforce a 4.51 contrast ratio minimum. For graphical marks, bars, lines, points, never under 3.1. And for high-risk KPIs, aim 7.1. That's your hardened alloy. Anything weaker, and your alerts behave like ghosts. You see, Microsoft ships accessible themes. Good baseline, but not gospel, because your report introduces real backgrounds, layer effects, and images that shift perceived contrast. So we calibrate in the field, not in theory. Grab Color Contrast Analyzer or WebIM. Take the exact color pair that appears in your visual, foreground alert red, background card gray, and test it against the actual pixel values. No assumptions, no, it looks fine on my monitor. Measure the luminance delta. If it flunks, we adjust the compounds. Everything changes when you add redundancy. Never color only. If an alert state is critical, bind an icon, an adjacent label, or a pattern. Think of color as heat, iconography as shape, labels as density. One of them will carry the alert through foggy lighting, projector washout, and color vision deficiency. Without redundancy, one drop of ambient glare, one drop, kills the signal. Let me show you the containment procedure. Step 1. Define alert states in your theme, JSON, not ad hoc on visuals. Set explicit hex values for positive warning, danger. Lock their usage in data colors and conditional formatting palettes. Step 2. Bind alert-related text to colors that exceed 4.51 on the background your theme actually uses. If your canvas is dark, your text is bright. If your canvas is light, your text is dark. No trendy, mid-tone mush. Step 3. Enforce an icon set. For danger, a triangle or bolt. For warning, a hollow circle. For success, a check. Simple, high-contrast glyphs with no unnecessary outlines. But they are slippery. Tooltips, annotations, and small labels often slip under the radar. This is why you enforce a floor. No text element under 4.51. Full stop. For line charts, if your red line and your grid are too close in luminance, the line disappears under motion. Thicken the line slightly, raise contrast, or lower the grid intensity. The grid is scaffolding. The line is the plasma. Don't let the scaffolding burn the plasma. Microstory, last week, a finance lead swore their risk alerts weren't firing. They were just in a pale red at 2.21 against a light card. When we flipped the alert to a darker hue and added a bold exclamation icon, reaction time dropped from seconds to instantaneous. That's not cosmetics, that's operational latency eliminated. Performance matters too. High contrast elements render faster to the brain. Cognitive load drops. Users scan, recognize, and decide. That's throughput in your decision reactor. Now the pass-fail protocol, no wiggle room. Text and UI below 4.51, fail. Graphics below 301, fail. High-risk KPIs that carry financial or safety impact, not at 7.1, soft fail. Escalate and justify, or fix. Any alert state that relies solely on color, fail. No redundancy, fail. And here's the brutal rule. If a color tweak breaks brand yields. Data truth outranks aesthetics, always. Tools at hand. Color contrast, analyzer for precise checks. WebIM for quick verification. And the report level theme, JSON, as your binding spell. Document your approved alert palette. Include sample foreground, background screenshots, and bake a contrast checklist into your pull request template. If a reviewer can't see the state change at 100% zoom on a standard laptop in ambient light, it fails. Good, the heat is dropping. The reactor stabilizes. But the matrix? Oh ho ho. The subtotals are camouflaged. Aggregates are leaking truth through the floor. Containment first, then we descend. The matrix subtotal leak. Aggregates camouflaged. Observe the anomaly. Your matrix looks orderly, but the aggregated truth is dissolving into the fabric. Subtotals are masquerading as detail rows. Same color, same weight, same background. When the containment field, the theme, JSON, doesn't specify subtotal styling, Power BI defaults ooze back in like an unstable compound. Marvelous chaos, totals vanish in plain sight, and your executives think the detail lines are the whole story. You see, a matrix is a layered crystal. Detail at the base, subtotals as intermediate planes, grand total as the capstone. If those planes don't refract light differently via color, weight, background, your eye can't distinguish the structure. That's not a preference, it's optics. Visual hierarchy is a physical law. Weaker signals recede, stronger signals project. When the theme leaves subtotals undefined, you get weight parity, detail, and subtotal at identical amplitude, and the aggregate signal gets swallowed. Containment first. In the theme JSON, you must explicitly declare the subtotal and total styles for the matrix visual, not the vague data colors, the targeted selectors. Define font color, font weight, background, and divider properties for both row and column subtotals. Give subtotals a slightly darker text color than detail, a semi-opaque background band, and a bolder top divider. Then, for grand totals, escalate again. Heavier weight, stronger background band, and a high contrast text color that clears 4.51 against the band. Wonderful, elegant, and incredibly necessary. Now, tighten the molecule stream. Test across deep hierarchies. Stepped layout on, stepped layout off. Row subtotals only, column subtotals only, both enabled. Add negative numbers, thousand separators, and currency symbols to raise visual noise. If your subtotals still pop at a glance, the field holds. If they blend back into detail at 80% zoom, your alloy is too soft. Raise contrast or weight. But the defaults are slippery. Drill down adds indent. Zebra striping adds rhythm. These can trick the eye into trusting structure that isn't there. So we add a divider line with a distinct luminance edge above each subtotal row. That's your bar of tungsten. The divider separates the micro rows from the macro sum. Pair it with a light background band, subtle, not blinding, and a font bump. Not massive, 1 or 2 steps up, enough to signal, not to shout. Numeric emphasis without overload, right-align numbers, left-align labels, reduce decimals for subtotals to match business precision, and use a consistent unit suffix. If a subtotal carries a different unit or aggregation logic, label it explicitly subtotal QTD, so no one mistakes the chemistry. And never, never let conditional formatting for data bars obliterate subtotal visibility. Cap data bar saturation under subtotals or disable them for subtotal rows entirely. The subtotal is the sum of energy, not another particle. Microstory. A supply chain team missed a cost overrun hidden in the third level of a matrix. Detail rows danced with green bars, but the subtotal line was the same gray on white, same 12-point weight. It vanished. We introduced a 10% background band, 600 weight text, 1 pixel divider, and boom, the overrun leapt out. Approval to corrective action in minutes, not days. Pass, fail protocol, precise and merciless. At 80% zoom, a viewer identifies subtotal and grand total in under 1 second. If not, fail. Text contrast for subtotals and totals against their backgrounds. Never drops below 3.1. For grand totals, drive toward 4.51. If subtotal text weight equals detail weight, fail. If the divider is absent or visually indiscernible, fail. If zebra striping competes with subtotal bands, adjust tint or disable, clash equals fail. And if any override in a single visual can bypass your theme's subtotal styling, the theme fails governance, fix the JSON, lock it, revalidate. Subtotals contained. The structure becomes visible, the sums radiate. Now, hover states. Tooltips are chaos plasma waiting to spill. Tooltip chaos. Plasma, context lost on hover. Observe the anomaly. You hover, you expect clarity, and instead a smoky overlay drifts across the canvas. Text too faint, headers floating, background bleeding through the chart beneath. That's Tooltip Chaos Plasma. It swirls, it dazzles, and it steals context right when the user's attention is hottest.
One drop of low-contrast tooltip styling, and your entire narrative fractures.
You see, tooltips aren't decoration. They're the instantaneous lab notes of your visual experiment. If the theme JSON doesn't seize control of tooltip title, value, background, and shadow, Power BI defaults seep in like an unstable compound. The result? Title text flirting with 3-1, values in a misty gray, background semi-transparent against busy visuals. Illegible, slow, and dangerous. Containment first. In the theme JSON, specify tooltip elements explicitly. Title font color, high contrast against the pane. Value color, darker, assertive. Category labels, a step lower but still legible. Background, opaque enough to smother the chart noise behind. No gauzy translucence. Then the shadow, subtle but real, creating a luminance edge that separates the tooltip from the scene. We're welding a shell around the plasma, not sprinkling glitter. Now this is important because the brain is sprinting. When a user hovers, they expect sub-150 ms comprehension. If they have to squint, read twice, or tilt the screen, you've introduced latency into the decision reactor. So we enforce AA contrast, 4.51 for all tooltip text, full stop. That includes the tiny bits, axis labels inside the tooltip, secondary metrics, and those sly footnotes some visuals sneak in. No mid-tone mush, no brand gray excuses. Scope matters. Standard tooltips, report page tooltips, anomaly detection tooltips, they each obey different defaults. Your theme must force order across all of them. For report page tooltips, assume someone has sprinkled backgrounds, shapes, and small cards on that page. Set the tooltip canvas color and all text styles in the theme so those nested elements still meet contrast against the pane. Think layered shielding, pane, then background, then text. Each layer must pass or the core escapes. Content discipline, oh ho ho, this is where most teams melt. Top line, metric name, not a cryptic code. Second line, time or context, like last 30 days or current month. Then a max of 2 supporting values. Avoid walls of text. Tooltips are bursts of plasma, not a textbook. If you must add explanation, use a short label like notes and a single phrase. Anything more belongs in a drill-through. Performance sanity. Heavy DAX on hover is like pumping thick oil through a capillary tube. If your tooltip queries drag, users hover, wait, and abandon. Pre-calculate where it's reasonable. Cache small lookups. Simplify expressions. Target sub-115 ms render. Speed is clarity. Testing protocol, merciless and repeatable. Place a tooltip over a dense stacked bar, over a dark map, over a zebra-striped table. If the text remains legible at 100% zoom and the header stands apart from values at a glance, pass. If any label truncates the key KPI name, fail. If the shadow is imperceptible on bright canvases, deepen it. If the background shows chart lines through the pane enough to interfere with reading, increase opacity. Contrast, 4.51 or higher, validated with real pixel samples captured from the overlay itself. Microstory. A marketing lead complained that anomaly tooltips did nothing. They did plenty, just in a translucent gray pane with pale header over a vibrant map. Nothing punched through. We locked a dark tooltip background, crisp white title at 7.1, value in near black, added padding so text didn't kiss the edges, yes, and the anomalies finally shouted instead of whispering. Pass, fail, checklist, AA contrast on all tooltip text, pass. Opaque background sufficient to erase underlying noise. Pass, title value hierarchy obvious in under half a second? Pass. No truncation of KPI names, pass. Render snappy? Pass. Anything else is a leak. Fix the JSON retest commit, hover, stabilized. Context contained. Now, tighten your grip. We're handling uranium next. Card visual uranium, fonts, and hierarchy out of control. Ah, card visuals, pure, undiluted power. A single number with the mass of a star. But untreated, they sprawl, they shrink, they wobble. Value and label parity destroys hierarchy, and suddenly a dashboard reads like a ransom note. Card visuals are uranium, potent, glowing, and catastrophically unstable without a proper containment field. Here's what actually happens. You build a theme, you set brand fonts, and you forget to constrain card value size, label ratio, and color separation. Power BI defaults creep back in, and every card negotiates its own physics. One card screams at 48 pt. The next whispers at 22 pt. Labels either vanish or compete at the same weight as the value. Users scan left to right, see a cacophony, and their cognitive load spikes. Decision latency rises. Trust drops. Containment first, lock the reactor. In the theme JSON, define explicit font families, then set value font size ranges per visual type, standard card, multi-row card, KPI. Establish the ratio. Value size must exceed label size by a fixed multiplier. 1.8x to 2.2x often lands right. Pick one and freeze it. Color separation. Value in high contrast primary text color. Label in a secondary that still clears 4.51 against the background. No ghost gray labels. If you can't read the context, the number loses meaning. Variants need specs. Standard card, large value, compact label, controlled padding. Multi-row card, smaller values, consistent spacing, label right aligned or stacked with disciplined line height. No wrapping unless absolutely required, and if wrapping occurs, your width is too narrow. KPI visual. Value dominance with a subordinate trend and goal. Arrow icons must be legible and never carry meaning by color alone. Pair color with shape or text. Number formatting. This is your isotope purity. Standardize units, decimals, and suffixes. Decide when to show KMB and when to display full precision. Never concatenate text into the measure to fake labels. Use proper label fields so the theme can style them. Reserve bold for the value. Keep labels normal or semi-bold at most. And align across the grid. Cards in a row should share value baseline and cap height, so the eye glides rather than stumbles. Visual rhythm diffuses sprawl. Set max width and consistent margins so no single card balloons and dominates. If a number is inherently long, think percentages with decimals. Reduce decimals or adopt abbreviations consistently. If a metric must shout, don't inflate the font. Change the context panel, add an icon, or relocate it to a spotlight section with deliberate spacing. Control the energy, don't let it saturate the room. Now, test like a physicist. Create a row of 5 cards: revenue, margin percent, NPS, incidence, and uptime. Apply your theme. At 100% zoom, can you distinguish value from label immediately? Does each value share a common scale of size? Does the label remain legible with AA contrast? Do long labels truncate gracefully or wrap without destroying rhythm? If any card deviates, your containment is leaking. Adjust the JSON, retest, iterate. Microstory. An operations dashboard used 2 card styles across pages. One with 52 pt values and faint labels, another with 28 pt values and bold labels. Managers fixated on the loud cards and ignored the quiet ones, even when the quiet ones were SLA breaches. We locked value to label at 2x, enforced 4.51 label contrast, constrained widths, and boom, their scanning pattern normalized. SLA breaches were seen and acted upon. Pass, fail, merciless. Value to label ratio consistent across all card types. Pass. Label and value each meet AA contrast against background. Pass. No overflow or wrapping of values. Pass. If it wraps, fix width or format. Labels never equal or exceed value weight. Pass. Icons or directional cues legible and not color only. Pass. Any card that deviates under theme application indicates a governance failure. Update the JSON selectors, commit, and block overrides. Cards tamed. The uranium glows steadily within thick lead walls. The board sees the number, understands the label, and moves. Now with hover stabilized and cards contained, we breach the final surface, slicer states. Selected versus unselected lies are next, and they are slippery. Slicer state deception. Selected versus unselected lies. Now we confront the trickster, slicers. They look innocent, but when selected, unselected, and disabled states share the same visual energy, the containment field collapses. Users think they're seeing all data, while a silent filter strangles the result set. That's not UX friction, that's a governance breach. You see, slicers are switches in a reactor panel. If the toggles don't glow differently when they're engaged, operators guess. Guessing in analytics is radioactive. Root cause? The theme JSON leaves slicer states vague, so Power BI defaults ooze back like an unstable compound. Hover looks like selected, disabled looks like unselected, and multi-select chaos turns every tile into the same gray biscuit. Marvelous chaos, catastrophic outcomes. Containment first. In the theme, JSON define the 4 states explicitly. Base item, unselected. Text color at high legibility, background neutral, border subtle. Selected, a distinct background band plus a crisp text color that jumps. Contrast at AA against the band. Hover, an outline or elevation change, not a color that mimics selected. Disabled, reduce opacity and drop saturation, but keep text legible at AA. It must look unavailable without becoming unreadable. For list and drop-down slicers, enforce a visible checkmark or leading icon for selected items. That's your shape redundancy. For tile slicers, set selected background to a firm tint with 4.51 text and a visible 1 to 2 px border. And for date hierarchy slicers, style the selected range chip so it's unmistakable. Dark chip, bright text, clear, from to. Affordance is everything. Place an always-on reset button, large enough to hit, labeled reset filters and bound to clear selections. Then add a report-level filter summary text at the top of the canvas. Filters, region equals EMEA, product equals all, date equals last 30 days. That's your on-canvas Geiger counter. If users can't articulate the filter state in 1 second, the field is lying. Keyboard and screen reader paths matter. Ensure the focus ring is high contrast and consistent across states. When tabbing, the selected item should announce as selected with the group name read aloud. Tooltip labels on slicer items should echo the state. Selected, North America. No ambiguity. If a keyboard-only user can't change selection confidently, fail. Testing protocol. Tighten the molecule stream. Build a grid with list, drop-down, tile, and date. Enable single select, then multi-select. Throw dark and light page backgrounds at them. Place slicers above heat maps and photos to force real contrast tests. At a 3-foot viewing distance, can a colleague identify which items are selected in under 1 second? If not, the energy signature is too faint. Boost background, tint, border, or iconography. Performance sanity. Keep visual headers lean. Don't bury the clear icon under low opacity mush. Ensure select all is either styled distinctly or removed. Half visible select all flips are chaos plasma in production. Pass, flush, fail, merciless. Selection state recognizable at a glance from 3 feet. Pass. If users squint or lean in, fail. AA contrast for all states, text and icons on any page background. Pass. Anything under 4.51 fail. Reset discoverable within 1 second and works. Pass. Hidden reset equals fail. Focus ring visible and consistent. Screen reader announces state and group. Pass. If not, fail. Hover never impersonates selected. Disabled never impersonates unselected. Any mimicry? Fail. States stabilized. Decisions clear. Containment holds. The validation protocol. Policy, automation, version control. Now we forge the containment. The protocol that turns style into law. 1 validation report, not 5, not scattered screenshots. A single brutal gauntlet with light and dark pages that hosts every surface we just disciplined. Cards, KPI, matrix with deep hierarchies, line column charts with grid lines, slicers, list, drop-down, tile, date, tooltips, standard and report page, and a dense background image to expose contrast lies. This is your reactor hall. Automate the inspections. First, a contrast sweep. Capture pixel samples from representative visuals. Alert text on card background, matrix subtotal on band, tooltip title on pane, slicer text on selected tint, and run them through your analyzer. Log ratios right in the report with a tiny measure table, 3.1 for graphics, 4.5.1 for text, aim 7.1 for high-risk KPIs. Any value below threshold trips a visual fail badge. Second, hierarchy audit. Measures check font size, weight parity between detail and subtotal, and flag parity as failure. A DAX-driven, at-a-glance time test stamps pass only if subtotals and grand totals are distinguishable in under 1 second at 80% zoom. Harsh? Good. The physics of perception are harsh. Third, tooltip readability checklist. A toggle page cycles background density, busy chart, dark map, zebra table, and snaps pass fail states for title value truncation, pane opacity, and shadow visibility. Under 150 nims render, pass, stutter, fail. We're not guessing, we're timing. JSON as code, bind it to schema. Link the public Power BI theme JSON schema in your IDE so invalid selectors scream immediately. Commit the theme to Git or Azure DevOps. Every change opens a pull request with 3 attachments. The JSON, the exported validation report, PBIX, and a screenshot collage of contrast pairs. Reviewers run the report, verify the badges, and only then approve. Organizational deployment, tenant themes, signed and versioned. Publish v1.3.2, not final new JSON. Block local overrides on certified workspaces. If a report attempts to override a governed selector, cards, matrix subtotals, slicers, policy rejects it or flags it in CI. Delicious discipline. Governance workflow, precise and repeatable. Design, peer review, accessibility plus hierarchy plus tooltip audit. Validation report pass, no AA failures, 5 surfaces pass, usability at 100% zoom. PR approval with named reviewers, tenant deploy, announce changelog. Exceptions, document variants, list affected visuals, including custom visuals that ignore theme, and set a retest date, quarterly at minimum. Final gate, etched in tungsten, no AA contrast failures, and all 5 surfaces pass. If any fail, the theme is unstable. Back to the lab. Adjust compounds, rerun the reactor. Here's the single truth. Your theme is the containment field. Govern it ruthlessly, or your data lies loudly and slowly. Adopt the validation report today. Wire contrast gates into PR approvals, and switch to organizational themes locked by version. If you want the full governance build-out, subscribe now and watch the deep dive next, where we wire the CI pipeline and bind the essence permanently.